You had a raid at the president's attorney's office. In fact, 4 separate locations yesterday.
It's frankly a real disgrace. It's an attack on our country in a true sense.
This was Hillary Clinton, and they went into her lawyer's office. The ACLU would be on every television station in America, jumping up and down.
President Trump promising a forceful response to Syria's deadly chemical attack.
It's about sending a message and hurting the elite that is being so evil in that country.
This is the beginning in this sector of the president's border wall. Make no mistake, ladies and gentlemen, this wall is going to reduce illegal entries.
Breaking right now, China just filing a complaint with the World Trade Organization against the U.S. This comes after President Xi Jinping promised to lower tariffs on auto imports.
Well, you've got the guitar right there. Could you play Happy Birthday? Because we got right over here Billy Dean, your pal.
Oh, good Lord, Billy. Well, let's get in, Mikey. Happy birthday, you Gary. Happy birthday to you.
A close watch on this heart of mine. I keep my eyes wide open all the time. I keep the ends out for the tie that binds. Because you're mine.
Recognize that voice.
The Man in Black. Indeed, a new book out called The Man in Song, and Larry Gatlin was here because his friend wrote the book and he wrote the intro. Join us right now. We've got our friend, Fox News senior judicial analyst Judge Andrew Napolitano. Judge, we got to ask you about.
Do you have anything to talk about this morning, Brian?
Unbelievable, yes. So did you think we were going to be talking about a raid in 4 of Michael Cohen's offices and residences?
No. I did not think that this would happen, and quite frankly, we learned a lot more about it overnight that we didn't know when it was happening yesterday.
Who made the decision to make this raid?
Jeff Berman. You probably don't know him. Jeff Berman is the acting U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York, Manhattan, appointed to this job by President Trump. Bob Mueller's people stumbled upon evidence, not proof, evidence of bank fraud on the part of Michael Cohen. And they said, look, A, this is in New York and our team is in D.C. Right. B, we're really not interested in bank fraud with the president's lawyer. You take a look at it. It's your bailiwick. Berman's people look at it and say, there's evidence here. Some of it may be attorney-client privilege because the evidence of the bank fraud, I'll tell you what I think it is in a minute, I don't know for sure, I haven't seen it, is intertwined with information secrets that the client, Donald Trump, told Michael Cohen. Michael Cohen has been Donald Trump, the individual person, before he was president, his lawyer for many years, and the lawyer for the Trump Organization, and the lawyer for all the entities owned, operated, or controlled by the Trump Organization. So when the FBI seizes this stuff, they seize a lot of things that belong to other people, mainly the president, even though they're looking for bank fraud.
So who's gonna sort it out? I was reading today about a taint team where it's like, okay, they can look at that, they can't look at that.
There's 2 ways to sort it out. One is to have a team in the Justice Department do it. The better way to do it is to have a U.S. magistrate judge in Lower Manhattan do it. This is a federal judge.
But the volume, there's got to be tens of thousands of documents.
Yes, because they raided his home under construction, the hotel room where he was occupying, his private office in Rockefeller Center across the street, and his office inside the Trump Organization in Trump Tower.
Is that taint team is allowed to look through all of his clients' information?
They can look at it, but they can't use it. They can only hand over to the prosecutors.
What if they leak it?
Yeah, but that's in theory,
Well, if they leak
Judge.
it, they violated the law. But they can only use in a courtroom or in a prosecution what they were looking for. I suggest to you what they were looking for is this, bank fraud. Michael Cohen famously admitted paying Stormy Daniels $130,000 not to talk about her alleged relationship with the president, which the president denies, during the campaign. Mr. Cohen, where did the $130,000 come from? He said, I took out a home equity loan on my house. What did he tell the bank when he took the home equity loan? If you borrow $130,000 from the bank and you say, I'm going to add a room to my house, and instead of adding the room to your house, you pay a porn star, that's bank fraud.
Which, we've said, thankfully, none of us have done. But if you have an equity line of credit...
I meant you rhetorically, not you personally.
If you get an equity line of credit, it doesn't matter. So we don't know how he got the 130. He might have had it in his savings account.
He might have been able to get it without telling the bank anything if it was a demand deposit, meaning he could just take it on his own. But if he had to tell the bank what he was using it for and he misled the bank, that's the problem.
So the Washington Post says bank fraud, wire fraud, campaign finance reform.
Okay, wire fraud would be It's a technical crime. You've already got the money by fraud. You wire it over interstate lines, which is what he did. Wired it from New York to a dummy corporation he set up in Delaware, and from the dummy corporation in Delaware to the trust account of the lawyer for Stormy Daniels, not her personal lawyer, but a prior lawyer. The FEC is the Federal Election Commission failing to report this as a benefit to the campaign. Again, in my view, a technical crime, not a very serious
Russia
one.
collusion?
No, but if they indict him for bank fraud, they're going to try and squeeze him to see what he knows about Russian collusion, which is their MO.
Because it's Felix Sater, who was who built Trump Soho, who was evidently the link to the Trump organization and Russia that they've been trying to get something done from the 90s to 2000. And they knew each other through high school.
Correct. And the link between the Trump organization and Felix Sater, whose goal was to build Trump International Hotel and Tower in Moscow, was Michael
Judge, I have a question. Why is this common practice for a lawyer to protect their client and pay money on the side without telling their client?
No. In fact, it's unethical for a lawyer to pay the client's bills. All those bills I paid for you, Brian.
Right.
You owe me.
Listen to this. Oh,
kidding about this. But it is absolutely unethical for a lawyer to pay the client's bills. An extremely unusual thing that he did, and therefore it's probably not enforceable.
Look where we are today. The fact that you know, all the coverage on all the channels is about this attorney in New York, who is the president's personal attorney. You know, his offices and his homes were raided in search for what could be bank fraud. It all started because Jeff Sessions recused himself over the whole Russia thing. The president yesterday in the cabinet room said this about the attorney general.
The Attorney General made a terrible mistake when he did this and when he recused himself, or he should have certainly let us know if he was going to recuse himself, and we would have put a different Attorney General in. So he made what I consider to be a very terrible mistake for the country.
Jeff Sessions should have said, I was involved with the campaign, I should step down as Attorney General, reclaim my Senate seat, and take another position in the cabinet.
Well, I don't know
that was the beginning of the stupidity of it, Jeff Sessions.
Look, hindsight's 20/20.
But he didn't even tell
he should never have accepted the appointment, because the Russian investigation started in October of 16.
He was a bad pick.
And he knew he was going to be a witness. But if he felt he had to recuse himself, Mr. President, you are entitled to an attorney general in whom you have great confidence. I'm not sure that I am the guy. If I recuse myself, half of what the DOJ does, I will have nothing to do with.
But it would have been anybody who had been on the campaign. If they were installed as attorney general, then they would have had the same problem, according to him. And Mr. Sessions said, when he testified last year, he said, you know, as soon as I got here, the people at the Department of Justice made it very clear that I had to recuse myself.
The last time I was here, last Thursday, the president was ranting and raving about the DOJ, and quite properly so, about the DOJ not complying with subpoenas from a Republican Congress. The DOJ lacks the stern management and strong will that a strong attorney general should bring, because Sessions is too tentative.
If Jeff Sessions resigned today or tomorrow and decided he feels the pressure, he needs to step down, if the president appoints someone else to take his place, would he or she take over the investigation?
Yes.
So
yes, there may not be a need for a Bob Mueller. There'll be a need for the investigation, but it might not be.
Let me give you a scenario. Jeff Sessions says, I got to go claim that Senate seat over in Alabama.
I got to run against Doug Jones.
Right, I got to run against Doug Jones and go get my Senate seat, which I would walk over and get. The president, he resigns. The president says, goodbye, Rod Rosenstein. You've done a terrible job. And they put in someone like Kelly Ayotte in that position. I mean, would they have a problem confirming somebody who's been an attorney general already?
Absolutely not.
Right?
Absolutely not. The president is entitled to an attorney general in whom he has tremendous confidence and faith.
Right.
The best president-attorney general relationship we ever had, the attorney general was the president's brother.
Judge, 1 minute ago, the president tweeted, attorney-client privilege is dead, and then 48 seconds ago, hashtag a total witch hunt. All right, more on that in a little bit. And Brian's going to be talking to Jim Jordan and Mark Meadows all about what you were talking about.
So many questions for the judge this morning. Judge, just stay for 3 hours.
I'm hanging out, Kelby.
News time over there.
Come back.
Where is Jillian? Has she been here the whole time?
Hi.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good to see you.
Good to see
Good
you.
to see you, too. Let's get you caught up on some of your headlines breaking right now on trade tensions between the U.S. and China. China just filing a complaint with the World Trade Organization against the U.S. over steel and aluminum tariffs, claiming they breach international trade rules. This comes after President Xi Jinping promised to lower tariffs on auto imports. That promise addresses one of President Trump's concerns. Breaking overnight, 6 people are dead after a plane bursts into flames and crashes on a popular golf course in Arizona. The small plane going down shortly after takeoff, plunging onto TPC Scottsdale Golf Course. Nobody on the ground was hit. No word on what caused the crash. The NTSB is currently investigating. And right now, a desperate search underway for an escaped inmate serving time for making terroristic threats, assaulting an officer, and kidnapping. Jeremy Kudrin, you can see him right there, escaping from unsupervised work release in Nebraska. He hasn't been seen since Friday. Kudrin is serving a 15-year sentence and was due to be released in 2020. A child visiting the White House accidentally spills water on the floor, but the First Lady, she just brushes it off.
No problem. Don't worry, it's just the water, okay?
Oh, the First Lady comforting the child at a listening session in the Blue Room. Middle school students meeting with Mrs. Trump and Education Secretary Betsy DeVos to share stories, struggles, and challenges. Let's look at your headlines.
Not just the Blue Room, the Aqua Blue Room today.
All right. Oh, thanks, Jillian. 11 minutes now after the hour.
All right, the DOJ appointing a new lawyer to oversee the release of documents related to multiple investigations tied to the 2016 election. But lawmakers like Congressman Mark Meadows and Jim Jordan, they say it's not enough, and they're going to join us live next.
And he had the whole puzzle revealed. So how did one Wheel of Fortune contestant get that wrong? Easy explanation, straight ahead.
Have to get these redactions right, and unfortunately that just takes time. It was appropriate to pick John Lausch. He's the U.S. Attorney in Chicago, so outside of D.C. and independent of the FBI hierarchy, to oversee the production, oversee the redaction.
Wow, okay, so will that solve everything? The DOJ taking action as it comes under fire, accused of stalling documents tied to multiple 2016 probes. But GOP lawmakers, including our own next guest, are firing back, saying hiring John Lausch, a U.S. attorney, to oversee the redaction and release process is not good enough. Congressman Mark Meadows, Jim Jordan sit on the House Judiciary Committee. They are as frustrated as anybody in Washington right now. So does John Lausch make you feel better about the process? Jim?
No, he doesn't. And she talked about getting the redactions right. How about this? How about just giving the information to us in an unredacted form? Just a few weeks ago, we caught them trying to redact. Well, they did redact the conversation between Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, where they're talking about Strzok's relationship with one of the FISA court judges, Judge Contreras, who also happened to be the judge who oversaw the Mike Flynn case. They hid that from us. We had to go over there to the Justice Department to find out what was going on in that redaction. So how just about giving it to us in an unredacted form?
Mark, you know what she told me yesterday, She said, hey, listen, there's a lot of this has nothing to do with the Clinton investigation. Therefore, you have to keep on going through the pages as well as the redaction. Do you feel for her?
I don't feel for it. Let me just tell you, I'm tired of the excuses. I can tell you, I've looked at some of this stuff, and if you put all of their workforce on the level playing field where they're actually redacting it every day, what they produce to Congress is less than 2 pages a day. I mean, I don't feel sorry for her. I can tell you it's more spin, and here's what we do know. I sent a letter to the Attorney General outlining 10 redactions of material facts, not just names here or there, but material facts that the DOJ and FBI are hiding from Congress. And when that happens, enough is enough. Let's get the documents. Let's do it this week. And if this Attorney General and Deputy Attorney General can't do it, let's find 2 who will.
Well, Jim, you know, this is really the standard was set when Lois Lerner was allowed to get away with what she got away with, and as Koskinen was allowed to get away with what he was able to get away with, and they're out probably making money on the side right now in the free market. But this is the Attorney General appointed by Donald Trump, an FBI Director appointed by Donald Trump, a Deputy Attorney General appointed by Donald Trump. What is going on?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. And think about the double standard. Yesterday, we had the FBI raid the president's attorney's residence and his business and got information that's privileged information. And yet, when Hillary Clinton had 60-some thousand emails and David Kendall had possession of those emails, they got to decide on the front end. David Kendall, Heather Samuelson, Cheryl Mills, and Secretary Clinton got to decide which ones were personal, which ones they got to keep, and then ultimately destroyed, and which ones they gave back to the taxpayers, gave back to the government. So what a double standard we see. Why don't you just give us the information, Mr. Wray, give us the information, Mr. Rosenstein, give us the information, Mr. Sessions, that we've asked for.
Mark, I'm going to add something else to what Jim just said. They also got immunity, Cheryl Mills, and sat in on Hillary Clinton's interview where I guess James Comey couldn't even show up. So there's a huge difference between the two. But in the big picture, where do you go from here? Being that you're not satisfied, what are your options?
Well, I think you've got a couple of options. There are some deadlines this week. We put forth deadlines. Chairman Nunes, doing a great job, has put forth deadlines of this week to deliver the documents. You know, it would just take one simple phone call from the Deputy Attorney General to Michael Horowitz, who has all these documents, who's testified under oath that it's not a problem to give it to Congress and it wouldn't impede his investigation. Make that phone call today. If not, there will be consequences well beyond contempt of Congress.
But Congressman Jordan, what are your options if the redactions make it impossible to comprehend?
Well, we keep sending staff over to the Justice Department to see the less redacted versions that they possess over there that they won't show us unless we go over there to look at them. But we've also called for 9 months ago, we called for a second special counsel. And Attorney General Sessions sent a letter to Congress a few weeks ago and he said, only under extraordinary circumstances do you name a special counsel. Well, how about these facts, Brian? James Comey's been fired. Andrew McCabe's been fired. Chief counsel at the FBI, Jim Baker, has been demoted and reassigned. Peter Strzok demoted, reassigned. Lisa Page demoted and reassigned. Those two last individuals kicked off the Mueller team. And Bruce Orr, top official at the Justice Department, failed to tell the FBI and the Justice Department that his wife was working for Fusion GPS. How about that fact pattern? If that's not extraordinary circumstances, I don't know what is.
All right, Jim Jordan, Mark Meadows, thanks so much, guys. Appreciate it. Hopefully we set the table, make some progress. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
All right, remember that caravan of migrants traveling through Mexico as we switch now to illegal immigration? Some of them are not stopping until they get here, and they just admitted it. Plus, the media is saying President Trump is losing evangelical support.
Driving too slow in the passing lane in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Under a new state law, the fines there could be $100 if they cannot keep up with the traffic. And finally, numero uno, number one, Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, named the busiest airport in the world. 2017 marked the 20th consecutive year that Atlanta took the top spot with the Airports Council International Trade Group. That's some of your news by the numbers. Now let's go right over there. And Ainsley is downstairs with a couple of special guests.
Oh, there you are. Thank you so much. Well, the media is now claiming President Trump is losing support among evangelicals. Listen.
When it suits the politics, piety is great. And when it doesn't suit the politics, the piety is easily excused. And that is hypocrisy.
Trump's support among white evangelicals is falling.
How did we go from Matthew 25 evangelicals to Stormy Daniels evangelicals?
All right, but what happens when you actually talk to value voters? Here now are the co-hosts of CBN's Faith Nation, Jenna Browder and David Brody. Thank you both for being with us.
Great to be with you.
Your show's awesome. Congratulations on your success. So, Jenna, you sat down, you wrote an article that I read that's on CBN's website, and you sat down with Tony Perkins from Family Research Council, and you asked him, in light of Stormy Daniels, in light of the Billy Bush video, why are so many evangelicals supporting the president? What was his response?
Yeah, you know, it comes down to grace, and he, of course, had that infamous Mulligan comment, but he explained that to me, and it really does come down to grace and the fact that this president continues to, for the most part, keep it clean in office. We're not hearing about scandals coming out of the Oval Office, and that he continues to deliver on policies that are really important to evangelicals.
David, are they voting for the Supreme Court? Are they voting for how they perceive marriage? Are they voting? Why are we going to the polls to vote nowadays? And do the social issues, do what we did in the past, are they carried carried with us into the voting box.
Many of those social issues are. They're voting in the macro. As Jenna was talking about, they see that from a long time ago, a lot of the past. Look, he's not a Boy Scout, right? This just in. But they knew that beforehand, and they realized also that the culture had deteriorated so much, especially in the last 10 to 12 years, that they're to a point where they will try anything. They are so desperate for someone to bring Judeo-Christian values back to this country. And so here comes Donald Trump, warts and all, showing that God definitely has a sense of humor, for sure.
All right, so look at the Pew poll. Pew poll says 1/4 of the electorate in 2016, they voted evangelically, or there are evangelicals, voted for President Trump. A recent poll shows 78% of evangelicals approves of the president. Why is that?
Well, there's a lot of different reasons for it. Obviously, it's the values that he... Look, I was talking to an evangelical leader the other day, and I said, so what's on tap for 2018? This was a few months ago. He said, what else is left exactly? I mean, he has done everything that evangelicals have wanted him to do. And so it's funny because if you remember back in the campaign, a lot of folks were saying, oh, he's just playing evangelicals like a fiddle. Not at all. He's actually delivering on many of those campaign promises.
Yeah, and many of them, Ainsley, a lot of people who we talk to out there, we were just at an evangelical conference over the weekend, and many of them will tell you they're very protective of this president, and they feel like the more the mainstream media go after him, the more they feel the need to protect him. And a lot of journalists just don't understand this, but evangelicals, many will tell you that they believe that Donald Trump is God's chosen candidate. And for so many people, that just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Flaws and all, like you said. Now, the president is going to meet with his advisors, are going to organize a group of 1,000 pastors, and they're supposed to all meet this spring. Do you know anything about this? What can you tell us?
Well, I can tell you, we know something about it, but the mainstream media clearly doesn't. There were so many different headlines saying that evangelical leaders are planning this big June summit to talk to him about Stormy Daniels. Not true. As Donald Trump would say, fake news. The Hill reported it. The Washington Post at first had reported it. They've since changed the story. We've reported what is really going on, which is this is a summit of conservative evangelicals that may potentially not even happen, but when it does, it'll be about the issues that Donald Trump will be there. He'll take some questions, but it's issue focused. That NPR originally had the story, and NPR was reporting what a couple of evangelical organizers or leaders want to talk to the president about, but it's not one of the topics on, Stormy Daniels and the Supreme Court. I mean, it's ridiculous. And once again, it goes to this idea that the more you pile on Donald Trump in the media, the more emboldened and, quite frankly, the more popular he becomes.
Yeah, and the idea of fake news. This is not a new concept to a lot of evangelicals. They've been calling it the liberal media long before President Trump came on the scene.
Jenna, David, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much, Ainsley.
You're welcome. Governor Rick Scott officially entering the Senate race down in Florida. The governor's going to join us live next. Plus, the National Guard is securing our border right this minute, and we are getting an exclusive look at our troops in action. Griff Jenkins takes us for a fly-along with a bird's-eye view over the border.
You can see that within seconds of we taking off, they crossed and were in 2 vehicles that quick, and we weren't able to get them.
I think that trust is becoming the most important factor in news.
Our responsibility is to ask the questions that are difficult and to demand answers of those people who are in power.
With the experience I've had in working at the White House, I think I'm better able to understand what's going on behind the scenes.
I'm part of that machinery of Fox News that works so hard to make sure that you not just know it first, but that you know it correctly.
I'm announcing I am running for the U.S. Senate for the great state of Florida. We need to send doers to Washington to get to work for us. We're tired of Washington working for them. They need to start working for us, and they're going to.
And with that, Rick Scott says, I was a governor twice. I can't do that again. I'm going to try to be the next senator from Florida. Right now, it's time to bring in the man that declared his candidacy yesterday, Senator Rick Scott. Senator Scott, what brought you... Governor Scott, excuse me, my bad. Governor, what brought you to this moment where you think this is the next best step for you?
Well, we've done everything we can to turn the state around. We've got to do the exact same thing in Washington. We've got to get Washington to work for all of us. Lower taxes, less regulation, and more jobs. We need more jobs in this country. So I can't run as governor again, and so I'm going to put all my effort into trying to fix Washington. We're going to fix Washington. We're going to change the direction. It's going to represent the citizens of this state.
Governor, did the president urge you to run?
He's talked in the past about that he's always wanted me to run, but I've looked at this over the last couple of years, and I've decided that this is my next mission. You know, here's what we do in this country. We send politicians, we send talkers to Washington. I'm a doer. I grew up in public housing. I don't know my dad. I had a wonderful mom that pushed me to get ahead. I built businesses, and that's what we've done in Florida. We have changed the direction of the state by just working our tails off, and I'm going to do the exact same thing in Washington, D.C.
Okay, in the meantime, the guy who's got that job right now, Bill Nelson, who has been there for a very long time, I know the Republicans feel that he is vulnerable because they've already started running some ads against him. The fact that he did not vote for the tax cuts, which are very popular with the majority of the country. Listen to this, Governor. Here he is talking about how he doesn't care who his opponent is.
I don't care who is an opponent. I always take them seriously. And I run like there's no tomorrow. And I think in this case, a lot of the differences between the two of us are going to come out in the course of the campaign. So that's what I'd say at this point.
So there is the senator who currently has a job saying the differences between the two of us will come out during the course of the campaign. What's the number one thing that Floridians need to know about the differences between you and Bill Nelson?
If you think Washington is heading in the right direction, you should keep doing the same things you're doing. We know the ideas of Washington haven't been working. It's not been working for us. We've got to get some fresh ideas. We've got to get new ideas in there. We've got to get talkers out of there. We've got to get doers in there. And that's what I'm going to run on. I'm going to put out specific policy proposals. The one yesterday I came out with is term limits. This concept of career politicians makes no sense in this country. We have term limits in Florida for House and Senate. There's clearly term limits in most states for governors, which there should. Term limits for presidents. Why don't we have term limits for Congress? That's what. Who doesn't care? Who doesn't want it? The politicians in D.C. don't want it.
Mm-hmm. How do you respond to the Democrats that fought you for the budget cuts on education and for flip-flopping on Medicaid?
Here, look at where we are. I walked in with a $4 billion budget deficit. Now, because we've turned our economy around, we've dramatically increased funding for K-12 education by $4.5 billion annualized. We have record funding for pretty much every program in the country. We're now, according to U.S. News and World Report, now we have the best higher education system in the country. $4 billion in the budget last year just for the environment and for agriculture. So when you turn an economy around, you can invest, and that's what we've done.
You know, they say this will be one of the most expensive races in the entire country. Where are you going to get your backing? Are you going to write checks from your own account?
Well, I'm going to go around the state, and I'm going to talk to everybody I can. I've been doing that as governor. I shake hands with probably about 250 people a day, listen to their ideas. I'm going to get my message out by talking to them every day. And we're going to win this race, just like I won the two governor's races, by talking to people and solving their problems.
I know that, well, yesterday you did declare your candidacy for U.S. Senate. It was the day before when you got some very bad news. Former press secretary Jerry Bustamante was killed. I'm sure you want to say a few words.
She was the most wonderful person. So your heart goes out. You know, her goal long term was she always wanted to be the president's press secretary. She wanted to be, you know, Dana Perino, and she's not going to get to do that now.
A boating accident down in Florida. Governor Rick Scott, we thank you very much for joining us from down in the Sunshine State today.
Thank you. Thoughts and prayers.
It's going to be a great day.
Yeah. Right. Morning to you guys. Let's get you caught up on some of the stories we're following, starting with this. Crews breaking ground on a high-priority stretch of the southern border wall. The 20-mile project is replacing an outdated portion with stronger concrete in New Mexico. This as the caravan of migrants moving through Mexico shows no signs of stopping.
Many of them will stay in Mexico. And actually, let me just ask them, ¿Quién se va a quedar en México? Who will stay in Mexico? ¿Y quién se va para los Estados Unidos? Enséñame las manos. So these are the people who say that they will be going to the United States, and some of them not answering, but many have told me that they plan to stay in Mexico.
At least 200 of the remaining migrants plan to go to the U.S. Nancy Pelosi welcoming her colleagues back to work by telling them to resist. In a letter to Democrats, the House Minority Leader calls for opposition to the upcoming Farm Bill and balanced budget amendment, saying, quote, "We must now step up our efforts to protect Americans from the ongoing assault by the Trump administration and Republican Congress on hardworking families and to promote a better deal." Pelosi's letter did not mention a push for a DACA deal. The wheels not exactly turning in this guy's head. The mispronunciation of one word costing one man a $7,100 Wheel of Fortune jackpot.
Flamingo dance lessons.
Sorry. Explain it. Ashley, it's your turn.
I'll solve.
Yeah.
Flamenco dance lessons.
Yeah, that's it. And we're going to...
Oh, instead of saying flamenco, the contestant went with, you know, the pink bird, flamingo. You got to feel for him, though,
you
right?
have to pronounce it correctly. You spell it correctly, and then you have to pronounce it correctly to win.
Yeah.
Apparently.
Than't you very much.
That lady, she just stole it from
Come
us.
on, Pat Sajak.
So it's her fault.
I guess the rules are the rules, right?
Yes, they are.
All right.
He'll never forget that again.
No, he won't.
No kidding. All right.
All right, 20 minutes before the top of the hour. Turning now to weather. The seemingly never-ending winter strikes again. Mother Nature shutting out the Cubs home opener in Chicago.
Not too cold for a selfie, though. Then, instead, players having some fun with a good old-fashioned snowball fight.
But the cold is not going to last for long. Janice is live out on the plaza with the forecast. Hey,
I
Janice.
hope so. I have some friends from South Carolina. What are your names? Where are you from?
Sal Rayo. We are the Rayos from Lancaster, South Carolina.
Is that close to Ainsley?
Not too far, an hour or two.
All right, well, stay tuned because we're going to look at the weather here because it's cold in New York. But you know what, friends? It's going to warm up here in New York City. We might get close to 80 degrees by week's end. So a quiet forecast. We do have some rain moving into the West Coast, so we're going to watch that. And we have a pollen report sponsored by Claritin. Here we go in Denver, Colorado. The pollen is high today, so take your Claritin. And then going over to Atlanta, Georgia, it's on the medium side. So make sure that you are prepared for the pollen. That's what happens in springtime. Do you want to say hi to Ainsley? Is Ainsley your favorite?
Ainsley, no, you're our favorite today.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even prompt that. You're the best.
We are Fox News junkies, that's for sure. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for coming out, my friends. You're now my best friends. Back inside.
Said hello.
Thank you, JD. All right, meanwhile, the National Guard is securing our southern border right now, and we're getting an exclusive look at our troops in action. Griff Jenkins takes us for an exclusive fly-along with a bird's-eye view over the border. You will actually see people sneaking into the country live.
Right. Plus, Loretta Lynch tries to explain that infamous tarmac meeting and her role in the Clinton email scandal. Will it change anything? Let's listen.
Did you ever once consider recusing yourself from the Clinton investigation?
Well, that's always an issue. As I said at the time, I knew that it was going to raise questions in people's minds.
You're going to want to see this. An exclusive look inside military operations that have just started on our southern border.
Our own Griff Jenkins became the first reporter to join the National Guard as they deployed on their Border Patrol mission. It's a joint mission out there with Border Patrol since President Trump ordered the boots on the ground last week.
Ooh, it looks scary to be up that high. I'm looking down. Griff joins us now from Laredo, Texas. I bet you had fun and enjoyed it, though, didn't you?
It was enjoyable. It was amazing to watch, Ainsley, our National Guard working with the Border Patrol hand in hand in this new deployment. But it was also stunning to see how porous and how difficult it is to defend the border portion here in the Laredo sector along the Rio Grande River. In just minutes with them going airborne, we were in hot pursuit. Take a look at this.
All right, baggage cargo.
Got 2992 information Romeo. But we've already got body traffic to the south here, so we're going to be going directly to the river.
I mean, it was just a matter of minutes, seconds. We got up in the air, already on it.
We're already on it. Hopefully a vehicle that's loaded up with either narcotics or just body traffic. We're not too certain.
Right there, black SUV.
That truck pulled into the neighborhood back on the right. You can see that within seconds of we taking off, they crossed and were in two vehicles that quick, and we weren't able to get them. So this is why 24-hour surveillance, especially when it comes to air operations, needs to happen.
What is the most stunning thing to see from this perspective is if you look out of this window, this is the Rio Grande River, and you see this road. They tell us that this is one of the most trafficked areas for narcotics because you can see you come across ankle-deep water, and you are right on the road. It looks like there's crossing now. Wow. So they just brought whatever they brought over. Now they're going back to get more.
Yep, that's it. Right now, it's just it's a hunt. and they can lay up, they can get under rocks, trees, and they'll wait it out for hours.
He said you've got 171 nautical miles of the river. How much of this is wall?
Zero on this in this ALR, this sector. Things shut down real quick when an aircraft gets here.
Within 5 hours, that very crew, guys, seized 362 pounds of narcotics. It's amazing, and that's why Governor Abbott is adding up to 1,000 more National Guard here in this sector.
Yeah,
guys.
but you know who's not? California. They don't see the drugs and illegals as a problem. Interesting.
So, Griff, the big problem right there is the fact that there are many spots in the Rio Grande River where you can walk across it. But the fact that there is a road right there gives them an easy escape route.
That's exactly right. That's why seconds, I mean minutes and seconds matter, because as soon as they get a camera or a hit and you put an helicopter up or a boat out, they could already be on that road and into the interior of the U.S. 171 nautical miles that are very difficult to defend.
So why don't they have a guard or border patrol right there at that road? They know that everybody's coming in to get on that road.
Manpower issue, simple and plain, because you have over 170 miles that you've got to do it. Really, I asked them how much of it is like that road, that access, and they said easily 35, 40 miles. Guys, cocaine is up 20% in terms of coming across the border this quarter. Tomorrow, I'm going to take us a little deeper into this sector and give you more information about that and take you out on the boats, and you'll see how difficult it is to defend against it, even just putting boats on the river.
The illegals will use straws.
Manpower.
The illegals will use straws or snorkel gear to go across so that they can go underneath the water and still have their air. Thanks so much, Griff. We look forward to seeing that tomorrow.
Good job. All right. Meanwhile, in the hot seat, Mark Zuckerberg from Facebook is going to face Congress today starting at 2 o'clock on Capitol Hill. Senator Chuck Grassley will be co-chairing the event. He's going to tell us what he wants to hear from Mr. Facebook coming up.
And we are marching on to the midterms. Republicans are hoping that they can flip Indiana's Senate seat in November. We're going to look at the issues that will decide that race coming up next.
Why don't you just meet me in the middle?
Well, all week long, we are highlighting the important races leading up to the midterms in November.
Right. This morning, we're breaking down the Senate race in Indiana, where Republican challengers hope to unseat Joe Donnelly. He's the sitting senator.
Here to break it all down for us is the co-founder and publisher of Real Clear Politics, Tom Bevan. Tom, thanks for joining us. So currently there's a Democrat in office, Democrat Senator Joe Donnelly, and he was the accidental senator. He was running against a Republican who put his foot in his mouth, so Joe gets elected. Who's he running against? There are 3 Republicans, right?
Correct. Todd Rokita, who's the current representative of Indiana's 4th Congressional District, Luke Messer, who currently represents Indiana's 6th Congressional District, and then Mike Braun, who's a wealthy businessman with no political elected experience.
Is there a sense of who the front runner is?
Well, it depends on who you talk to. I mean, Luke Messer is, I think, seen as a slight favorite, but this is a legitimate 3-way race, and that's one of the things that worries Republicans is that this one's gotten pretty nasty. Todd Rokita's bashing the other candidates as a never-Trump lobbyist and an Obama voter, and his slogan is defeat the elite. So it's getting kind of nasty, and that's one of the things that Republicans fear might help Joe Donnelly a little bit, is if this one stays bloody.
Okay, well, the primary is on May 8th. What are some of the issues at play here in that state?
Well, in the state for the general elections, obviously it's the economy, and you remember Joe Donnelly voted against the tax cuts, and outside groups, Republican groups, have already spent $2 million in the state bashing him for that. That will certainly be an issue. But also, remember back to the 2016 campaign, manufacturing, remember Carrier was sending jobs to Mexico. The tariffs and trade is going to be a big issue, also with the farmers in Indiana. And then obviously Trump himself. If the election becomes a referendum on Trump, Indiana is obviously Trump territory. He won it by 19 points in 2016. And the question is whether, energized Democrats can turn out the way they have in other states and give Joe Donnelly a chance there.
Well, if they want to have more substantial margin, they need this. And by the way, in 2017, the president only has a 1 point advantage in terms of their approval ratings of 48%. That's down significantly in a year where it was 55%. Why is it trending that direction?
Well, I think the president's approval rating overall has been down, and it went from 55 when he started to 48, which is not a huge drop. I mean, what has changed is he started with 33% disapproval. That's gone up to 47%, according to this Morning Consult poll. So, I mean, look, Democrats have never supported the president, so they're obviously against him. He's lost some ground with independents in Indiana, and I think that's where
it is.
That's where this race will be decided.
Tom Bevan, good job.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks, guys.
All right, straight ahead in the final hour, President Trump lashing out at Robert Mueller after the FBI raids at his lawyer's apartment. Yeah, we'll find out how he feels today and what he's been tweeting about this morning. Don't move.